Why is solo improvisation so hard? Even some advanced and pro-level players struggle to improvise well.
But why, Brandon?
The short answer is because you have to have a fast processing time. Let me explain. You see, all improvisation is your ability to compose music on the spot. You know when you're trying to improvise, but you have to take a moment to think about things because you're trying to remember that scale shape, or you're searching for notes, or you can't quite remember where you are in the chord progression. And because you don't want to look stupid, you just let your fingers go on autopilot and just end up playing the same shit that you always play. All of these factors are contributing to your processing time. And to be a better improviser, all we have to do is reduce that time. Lucky for you, that's what this video is all about. As well, at the end of this video, I'm going to be busting a myth that will 100% change the way you think about improvising on guitar. Let me show you an example of a fast versus slow processing time. Did you notice in the first solo how everything was cool? But in the second solo, I looked like a fucking noob. It really pissed me off. But I'm not even mad. This is what you sound and look like when you have to think about everything. Now don't get me wrong, you should be thinking when you improvise. If not, you get an entirely new problem. But that's a different video. The point is, now we have something that we can actually measure. Roughly speaking, of course. And that is the time it takes you to take something from your head and put it onto the fretboard. Big fun in the sun. If you're finding this helpful, make sure you don't subscribe to my channel. Age reveal at 1 million subs. Is Brandon 13 or 30? Only time will tell. So Brandon, what's the solution to this problem? And how can I be less depressed? Well, for starters, to be less depressed, have you considered not being a little bitch? In all seriousness, I don't really get why depression is glamorized these days. It's because they want you to be weak. The moment you have confidence, they attack you. Just stick with Brandon. I'll make sure you're not depressed. As for the solution to becoming a better improviser, we need to look at what influences our processing time. I'm gonna talk about the big 4 things, and then afterwards I'll tie everything together. And then you'll finally understand why you're so bad at improvising. Here they are. First is technique and rhythm. Your technique and rhythm should not even be receiving any focus. What I mean by that is your technique should be so solid and your ability to play in time should be so solid that you don't have to use any mental bandwidth worrying about it while you're playing. You actually should be on autopilot in this sense. Science! If you are, then clearly it's time to get off the cigarettes and start spending some more time practicing technique. I made an egg salad video that teaches 10 great exercises to improve your technique that'll link below this video because I'm the nicest person in the world and also the best looking. Next, understanding chord scale relationships. This one is pretty obvious. You need to know what scales work with what chords. If you're only improvising in one key, this is actually pretty easy. But it's not enough to just noodle your way up and down the scales. The entire point of learning scales is to use them to create melodies. And if you can't do this, well, clearly you don't know them as well as you thought. Just because you can practice them up and down the fretboard with a metronome doesn't mean you really know them. The way you practice is the way you play. So consider practicing melodic motives using the scales instead of just scales all the time, like a stupid and ugly person. Most of you doorknob lickers can play the minor pentatonic scale, but when it comes to literally anything else, including other pentatonic scale shapes, you're all like, what in the cinnamon toast fuck is this shit? You should be able to visualize the shapes on the fretboard as well as you can visualize the minor pentatonic. That's how you know you really know them. Next, have a good ear. This will prevent you from getting lost and allow you to play what's in your head. How many times have you been improvising over a tune and gotten lost and thought to yourself, where in the cinnamon toast fuck are we? I encourage you to train your ear to hear chord progressions better. People seem to think that ear training is all about sitting down and listening to intervals. Like seriously, there is more to ear training than that basic ass shit. Try putting on a backing track that you know really well. then leave the room and come back a minute or so later and try to improvise. Do you know where you are on the form? Next, the final big four thing that we're going to talk about is how well you know the neck. This will help you pick the right notes at the right times. Let me show you a great exercise to help you with this. Let's go. D flat, G, B. Then we have F sharp, then we have B flat, A, then we have C, then we have F, E flat, A flat, then we have D, E. Done. So that was 24 seconds. Here's what I'm doing during this exercise. I have a randomly generated list of all the notes. I'm going through one string at a time and finding every note in both places on the string. For example, there's an A on the 5th fret of the E string and the 17th. I'm also timing how long it takes me to do this process. That way I have something to measure. What gets measured gets accomplished. I love measuring things. Ideally, when you get good at this, it should take you 25 seconds or less per string. It's good exercise, but it's more so aimed at people that don't have a fucking clue about where notes are on the fretboard. Okay, now to tie everything together. So why is improvisation so hard? Perhaps a better question is, why are you so stupid? Believe it or not, I ask myself this question every day. I ask myself why everyone is so stupid but me. But the answer is this. Most guitar players are average by definition. And if someone plays with average technique, they have an okay sense of rhythm. They kind of understand chord scale relationships, but they have to take a moment to think about them. They have an average ear, and they kind of not really know the notes of the fretboard. Well, it's no surprise that they struggle to improvise well. Improvising well is the single hardest thing that you can do on your instrument. If you wanted to learn sweep picking and you were just consistent and you sat down every day to practice it, you would eventually get it because it's all physical. Improvising well requires brain power, which is something you lack. And you might be thinking, well, Brandon, improvisation is actually easy. And to that, I say, yes, it absolutely can be, but there are levels to this. Just because you can improvise over a fucking blues doesn't mean you can improvise well over a tune that looks like this. This tune is from my program, 52-Week Guitar Player. It's an extensive program with a focus on improvisation. Real talk, there's no point in joining an online guitar course in 2022. There's just not. You can find anything you want for free on the internet, which is why 52-Week Guitar Player, besides the structured curriculum that contains over 170 lessons, each of which has its own practice routine that tells you exactly what to do and exactly when to move on, we focus on the community aspect. We have 3 live streams every week over Zoom where you can talk to an instructor. Professional feedback is guaranteed in this program. And we also hold you accountable. If you fail to post a progress video in our group, I'll call you out for it. If you're interested in learning more, there's a link in the description where you can book a call with my team to do that. On that call, we'll talk about your problems, your goals, etc. It's all about you, fam. However, this program is not free. So don't book a call if you're a broke ass. I mean, sorry, but this is just business, and if that offends you, well, you're probably a broke ass. Now, do you remember when I said I'd be busting an improvisation myth later in this video? Well, that time has come. When you hear the word improvisation, you assume that means without practice, made up on the spot, something like that, right? This is actually a big misconception with improvising. Because when you see someone improvising, the fact that you're even hearing them, whether that be in a live performance, video, etc., it means they've practiced improvising over that track. If they're performing, that means they've prepared for it. So true improvisation is rare. Even if you see 2 guitar players that have never met each other before in their life and then they jam some blues and it sounds amazing, those guys have probably already played the blues 1,000 times. So again, this is not really true improvisation. So don't feel like an imposter for practicing licks and practicing improv. Every musician does this, myself included. Got it? I just felt this needed to be said because no one really talks about it. They'd rather look like a badass, when in reality, they've just spent a lot of hours in the shed. Age reveal at 1 million subscribers. Fun fact, when I say don't subscribe, it really means subscribe. Just thought I'd clarify for those of you that have low EQ. Okay, bye.